Live streaming is on.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Event Trader Gavin McGuire, just coming in for the latest edition of the Options Playbook, which of course means we are bringing in Options Trader himself, Brandon Mars, for a discussion on some of his recent trades and taking a look. We're going to be looking at Theta actually today. He's going to be breaking down that and kind of explaining what it means to all of us out there. So, uh, we'll be naturally keeping an eye out on the markets here as we see the S&P climbing back up to that 49.68 area, been able to hold support following the bond auction and now slowly moving higher as we start our own discussion here. So, Brandon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. How about you, Gavin?
I can't complain. Can't complain. Just getting back into the swing of things here. So I'm watching the markets, and I guess that's where we'll start our discussion. And that is, what are you seeing in the markets these days? Is there anything that's jumping off the page to you, Brandon, when you're watching things? And I know you usually like to lean in one direction or the other for calls or puts based upon your broader market reads. So, what is it that you're leaning towards these days?
Yeah, still leaning towards the call side. Again, the charts are looking strong. We got some, uplifting news for the bulls with Meta and Amazon. We have seen a little bit of it kind of felt like a nasty sell-off the last two mornings. Percentage-wise, it was pretty small, but, I think after so many bullish days, anytime you get a sell-off, it feels a little more painful than it actually is.
It is funny, Brandon, like kind of like, quietly following along the last few days. I was walking in expecting us to be in a bear market with the headlines that you see out there.
Right?
Yeah. I guess there's a relativity aspect of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the market action at this very moment feels very funky to me. And the reason I say that is, I'm kind of watching it and it kind of feels like underneath the surface they're buying. And I keep looking at all my different charts, my usual big tech names and, other things that I'm watching. And I keep seeing like sloping upward MACDs, increasing RSIs. I keep finding a bunch of hammer candles, lower wicks, showing accumulation and support. Yet the market keeps taking these dives. So, usually when I see these things, and you got to always take it with a grain of salt, just kind of feels like we're maybe getting ready to just whip higher. I don't know. Maybe it's all of a sudden one of these Fed speakers comes out and says something, but just feels like under the surface they're buying, but being a little obnoxious in the process.
Yeah. And you do have to wonder how much the 0 days to expiration options are playing in here because when we're looking at the options activity, it's one of the things I've been trying to do in terms of just going through and seeing exactly where people are putting their money. But when you're looking at put call ratios, VIX numbers and stuff like that, it's very difficult to track on that basis in terms of a fear gauge because of how much activity is going into the 0 days to expiration. But definitely something that we're going to continue to follow. But I feel like that is part of the reason that's given it that, quote unquote, funky feel to it. So what's a move that would have you thinking, okay, this could be the start of the rep? Like, is there an indicator that you're watching on that front?
Yeah, that's a loaded question right now for me because I feel like I've seen it like 4 times today, and then every time it kind of
yeah.
I guess actually very timely, and obviously we didn't plan this because the multi-trillion-dollar stock market you and I don't control, Gavin, unfortunately. Right now we finally got some movement, and again, just real quick, when I'm looking at my charts, I'm predominantly focused on a 5-minute chart. I've got all my moving averages on there, and just looking at the S&P and the NASDAQ futures. NASDAQ in particular, it's now 4 or 5 candles above the 20-day moving average, and that's intraday. I mean, So it's kind of been below that for a little while, and it's kind of slowly, steadily building there. And, we've got a couple green candles in a row, finally starts to feel like it's building. So kind of now is really, I guess, where I'm looking for the rip, and
Yeah.
hopefully we get it, because I've kind of been waiting for it all morning.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did get the one auction out of the way. There's still two more auctions on Wednesday and Thursday, and CPI on Friday. I don't know if that's going to be something we need to get out of the way before we could rip, perhaps. But yeah, for all the consternation about the markets right now, it's when you kind of peel back the onion and look at it on a longer time frame, just feels like we've been chopping around but not giving up any gains, which that upward trend that's been in place since the beginning of November definitely seems like it could lead to another further push here, as it doesn't seem like anybody's leaving the market, really, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and that actually reminds me of something. I think it was from last week, if I remember correctly, and I put it in my morning notes. So if I'm off a week, my apologies. But even the down days last week, when the market was down 2%, give or take, on the Nasdaq, and I looked at all the big tech names that I usually trade, and still the calls were outweighing the put buying. I mean, the put call ratios on all those names were still well below 1, plenty of call activity. So, I don't see a ton of that fear. So yeah, no, I think you're absolutely correct.
All right. So, well, we'll be keeping an eye out on the markets, and obviously your calls too. So just to see when you might be seeing that indication. I mean, maybe it's one of those things where we just need to clear up and get above that 5K, and then it's game on, right? And people just start getting that FOMO or whatever. But definitely bears some watching, and we'll be watching your commentary for that too. So why don't we take a look at some of your trades that you got going on? The first one we will mention is Goldman Sachs, where you bought some calls. Was it this morning or yesterday morning?
That was yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning. Now, I'm interested in this because I actually bought Goldman just about a week ago myself. I like the way it was just kind of, I guess Goldman would be indicative of how we see the broader market here, Brandon, as this has just been going sideways throughout all the headlines that we've been seeing, chopping around between 375 to 390. And I'm just looking for this to rip up into the 400 level. My assumption is that you're seeing the similar activity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this consolidation, like you just said, that's a very, very long consolidation. So, obviously being long calls and you being long the stock, hopefully our wisdom together means that we'll rip to the 400 level. But,
what's the phrase? The longer the consolidation, the longer the base, the higher the. I'm trying to remember what the colloquialism is for it. Something about the length of the base, the higher you could move. I forget the exact term though.
Yeah, I don't know the exact term, but in theory, like you're saying with that terminology, the longer the consolidation, the bigger the rip. We'll go with rip higher as opposed to rip lower. But yeah, in theory, the longer that a stock consolidates, the bigger the move it's going to make. So, again, let's lean to the long side, and that's how the stock has trended. That's how the market's trended. So that's personally just how I would lean. But in theory, when this thing finally breaks, in theory, it's probably going to even rip above 400, I would think. So yeah, no, I saw the consolidation, and I saw I had it on my watch list, and I saw some market activity or some price action yesterday morning. So I jumped on it, and unfortunately, I was kicking myself a little bit. If I had just waited until after the ISM numbers, it would have turned into not a huge win, but it would have been a pretty decent little Monday win. But I jumped in before it, kicked myself a little bit. But no, I still like it. It seems to be, again, kind of that funky activity. There seems to be some buying going on. I keep seeing these kind of interesting volume spikes kicking in. So sticking with the trade, I do like it. And yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting 400 tomorrow by any means, but I think that this is getting ready for a pretty decent move at some point.
Yeah. So we'll be obviously watching it closely here as we both have our toes dipped in that water. So should make for an interesting trade. But I agree with you. I think that this is set to rip higher here, Brandon. So move above 390 would be a good start. So let's keep an eye out on that. And obviously, fingers crossed. Another one that she took, you bought some Microsoft calls today, just a little while ago. It's been just kind of rolling over the 400 level, hasn't given that up at all. So just kind of sitting around. So watching that one as well. What is it that you like for Microsoft? Is it a very similar issue where you're getting that consolidation and you think it's time to jump in?
Yeah, consolidation again. I mean, I think Microsoft and Google were kind of victims of being the first earnings report. I mean, I was watching those earnings, and I know you had your eyes on them too, and you're all over that. But it seems like those first reports came out, and just instantly all the algorithms just kicked into sell. It almost felt like no matter what they said, we were selling. And then all of a sudden you get Amazon and Meta, and those were impressive reports, and those went up. But Microsoft and Google, I mean, the reports weren't terrible. So I just been kind of watching it, and then I jumped in. It made a little bit of a spike up at the open, and then kind of a elongated flag pattern, selling off, and all of a sudden you saw the big long wick and some volume kicking in on the intraday, and again, just kind of feeling bullish. And Microsoft is seemed like might be a good opportunity to jump in, and it's just kind of again gone sideways since I jumped in, unfortunately. I think kind of along with the chop of the market. So I still like it. Again, I'm kind of like sitting here kind of on the edge of my seat, kind of waiting for the move, both in the stocks and the market. So that's kind of where I'm sitting with Microsoft.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll be watching that. Now there's a few more. Hold on a second. So there's a few more that we were talking about that we wanted to kind of touch upon. Obviously, this week we've got the Super Bowl coming out. Brandon, there's about 23 billion or so expected to be bet on it. And two names that we were talking about before we got on the air here: DraftKings and Flutter, FLUT, which is the parent company for FanDuel. So I know you were talking a little bit about them. Do you have any interest or taking any action in them, Brandon?
FLUT, I mean, that's new, so we're not even really going to see any options activity there. And again, you gotta, I don't know, maybe take it as a sell the news kind of scenario. But yeah, reports are this morning on ESPN about 23 billion is set to be wagered on the Super Bowl. That I haven't traded DraftKings in a very long time, but chart looks pretty nice if you look at it on a monthly basis. Kind of going back a couple years. That 40 level is kind of key. It's above it. It's trending pretty strongly. So again, that might be a, no pun intended, lotto type ticket. On the week of the Super Bowl. So I personally might not take it myself, but just kind of thought with the timing of it might be an interesting stock to talk about. But strong looking chart, that's for
Yeah.
sure. And everything's kind of trending, all the moving averages are really trending in the right direction. It's above 40, holding up pretty well. So just, football is sometimes a little more fun than talking about candles. So figured throw it on everybody's radar.
Yeah. Now, what about Flutter? FLUT. Now, if I recall, I thought they just went public, but I guess not. But this thing's been ripping. Just looking at it on the weekly here, going back to January 19th, this was at 163. It's up about 50 points since then. So, would you prefer DraftKings over Flutter Entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, just strictly on the fact that Flutter's just a new issue, so for me, I kind of like to see the dust settle a little bit. If you wanted to take, again, maybe a little bit of a lotto or a flyer on a new issuance, I don't think it's the worst thing. I hope that they maybe make the Gronk kick of destiny or whatever they're calling it, maybe a little bit classier than last year.
I don't recall. What did he do last year?
Well, he did that thing where it was like the promo, and it was like if he makes the kick, like you get
Somebody got
free,
like a free house or something, right?
Yeah, and if he doesn't, and like they made it seem like he was gonna make the kick at halftime, like on the Super Bowl field, and then all of a sudden it cuts to like what kind of looked like a cartoon of him like kicking a field goal like in some random empty field. So
Yeah, you'd think they'd get a better stage for that, right?
Yeah, I mean the kick looked fake.
He missed it too, didn't he? If I recall,
he missed it, and it really didn't look like a real kick. And I'm not a big Twitter guy, but you went on Twitter and everybody was just like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
So, but for any that do use, I use DraftKings personally, and I would personally say keep an eye out for some of their deals that they keep rolling out each day, because they've got these boosts and freebies that keep coming out each day, and I've kind of just been we'll call it building my book for the Super Bowl.
Nice. Yeah, they definitely have some good bets like those. Pat Mahomes completes one reception or one completion or something. But so we will definitely be watching those. There'll be names of interest. This Flutter looks like it could get a little bit of a further extension over the last couple of days. So 2 names to keep an eye out on, obviously. A few others that you mentioned, Brandon, worst performance stock of 2024 Tesla, TSLA. Trying to find support down here around this 180 level. I've heard a lot of people talking about this 180 level, Brandon. So 175 to 180, really. What is it that you are seeing in the Tesla charts that you're kind of paying attention to and might have you getting involved one way or the other?
Yeah, so like you said, not a top performer, so definitely the momentum is not in its favor. But I put this in my notes, and I thought it would just be kind of a interesting thing to talk about, learning tool, if you will. Yesterday had a nice hammer candle on some somewhat elevated volume. Nothing too drastic, but definitely elevated.
On the daily, that is?
Yeah, on the daily, sorry. It also closed right around a fib level, the 23.6% fib level. And the fib that I'm referencing is the retracement from December 2021, going back that far, to January 2023. So, all of a sudden you've got this stock which generally has momentum, not in its favor right now, but has a hammer candle closing right around a fib level. So I wanted to at least throw it on my radar, because if holding that fib level means an actual bounce, then all of a sudden you've probably got the 190 and the 200 level coming into play. And I don't necessarily mean today or tomorrow, but in the near future, in theory. And, you know, this morning we got that gap down. You know, we've talked about gaps before. This is a time where you could have played a gap in your favor for sure. You got a gap down, and all of a sudden you saw some pretty strong volume for Tesla. I mean, on the intraday chart on the 5-minute candle, that's pretty strong. I mean, there's almost no wick at the bottom of it. There's almost no wick at the top of it, and it's on strong volume.
At which time was this?
I'm sorry, this was intraday on the 5-minute.
But which candlestick are you talking about? The one at 12:25 you're saying, or?
Oh no, this morning, right at the open. So
Okay.
the 9:30.
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And you got it right there. So, you know, almost no wick at the top or the bottom, high volume, and then it just goes. So, you know, I talk a lot of times about the risk reward, if you will, of trading in the first, you know, 30 minutes. This would have been a time to just jump on calls. And if you had bought, I probably would have looked at the 185s or maybe even the 190s, because you probably would have done pretty well on the 190s going out a step further because of that move. If you had just jumped on these at the open and you had gotten out of them by 9:45, that would have been a very, very nice options trade. So that was kind of what I was looking at. And again, I, you know, didn't really throw that idea out there because, you know, again, it was within the first 30, but that was what caught my attention on Tesla. So yeah, again, it's remained strong, obviously come back with some of the choppiness, but you know, if it can kind of remain where it is, and I guess technically at the moment that candle would be a piercing line candle on the daily, subject to change with 2 hours to go, but that is a technical bullish candle. You know, if momentum continues, I would think the 190 and again the 200 area would be in play.
All right, so we'll be watching for that. So is there any particular level that would trigger you to get in, or would it be more of the price action in the candles?
Definitely the candles, but I think the 185 area almost put in not textbook, but kind of put in a little bit of a double top on the intraday at 185 today. So I would probably call that the line in the sand. Well, maybe not line in the sand because we're talking upward momentum here. But if it gets above 185 with some momentum and then also some market momentum, I would think that's when 190 comes into play.
All right. Another name that you mentioned earlier, Brandon, Adobe. I know you played it last week. I believe you brought puts in it, if I recall, right? So what are you watching for in Adobe here?
Yeah, so
ADBE, of course.
Adobe, I'm going to put a full asterisk. I am not making a call to the upside or the downside here. I just want to throw this on people's radars because I had it on my radar entering today for a potential call, and I've been watching it all day. And almost all day long, there has been elevated volume and also elevated put and call activity. So, look, if I had the crystal ball, I wish I did. I don't know, but it feels like there's some sort of news or something that is about to happen on this. You know, again, I would probably lean towards the call side just because that's where the market's going. That's where the stock has been trending. But it's just been very interesting. Volume has just been elevated all day, and there's elevated call and put activity. So I just think it bears watching.
All right, so Adobe, another one to throw on your radar. Then I'm going to throw one at you, Brandon. This is actually a feedback question I got in front of the call, so I figured it would be worthwhile just getting your perspective on it too. And that's going to be Wolf Speed, WOLF, semiconductor play. for a lot of RFD chips. Name that I've been watching here just because it's been performing so abysmally. And we just see, just looking at this daily chart, you can see ran up to test the 200-day moving average at the end of December. And since that would have been right around the 45 level at that point, since then, just a steady decline here. You can see this break here. That's earnings right there. Some pretty large selling volume going on after this. So I guess it begs the question, have the sellers left the building here? And that comes to what I'd be curious about from your perspective on the charts, Brandon. I know the business, if you're curious, they're launching a couple of different capacity expansions that are really just forcing them to bleed cash at the moment. They haven't gotten the revenue and the new product line to make up for the expansion and capacity utilization, likely putting the next quarter in as a show me quarter. The company's going to have to prove that this turnaround is underway and that its new direction on revenue stream is going to pay off. So with that in mind, Brandon, when you're seeing this chart here, what's going through your mind, and is there anything in particular you would like to see in terms of grabbing catching a falling knife?
Yeah, so again, always catching the falling knife can be a little painful, but if I'm looking at things, I love looking at volume. That's one of the main things that I look at when I analyze charts. And just quickly looking here, I mean, I'm showing from quick glance here. It looks like the 65-day average on the volume for this is about 4.22 million shares. And just looking on the first and on the second, you saw 15 million plus shares. So that seems like some capitulation to me. Again, anytime you catch the falling knife, you got to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, and you got to be careful. But that seems like some capitulation to me. Today we are making a higher low, and it almost looks like a higher high. And the candle today is looks like it. Again, we got 2 hours to go, but looks like it's going to close towards the top of yesterday's open and also the top of today. So if you were to take a flyer on a stock and catching the falling knife, now would maybe seem like the time. So yeah, it's interesting, and technically today would also be a harami, and again, harami is basically an inside day after either a quick move, not necessarily quick, a move lower or move higher, and you get an inside day. You have to take those again with a little bit of grain of salt, because sometimes it's just a pause before the lower move continues. But hey, if you were to take a shot at something, this would kind of seem like the day. And then I'd maybe look for a move up to like the 5-day on the daily chart, 2780 at the moment. So that seems like a fairly reasonable risk return type trade if you're going to take a shot.
All right. Any other stocks that we didn't address?
No, I think we hit everything. I guess my main question now is, you seeing any news on this quick move lower all of a sudden?
Hold on a second. Let's take a look.
One of the Fed speakers out again or something?
Let's see. Getting a little puke here down at 49.60 level. Let's check headlines.
Oh yeah, I think there was a Fed speaker at
McConnell
2.
looks like no real chance for Congress approving border security deal. Kashkari's out. But he spoke yesterday.
I think from Chart
Kashkari didn't
Traders
say,
Note, Collins at 2.
he didn't comment on policy or economic outlook though.
Oh, okay.
So no comments there. I think it could be it's either the McConnell headline on the on a deal getting done, or Kashkari talking about delinquencies are creeping up, but he notes that they're very low low levels. What something that we've been seeing plenty of here. So we'll keep an eye out on that. But yeah, Collins isn't touching upon the whatchamacallit, the monetary policy here. So nothing coming from there.
Ah, gotcha.
All right. So again, I think it's got to be the McConnell headline. That would be my guess. So, all right. Let's see. So where were we? Okay, we're going to go into this week's discussion, and the next couple of ones we're going to be kind of covering the Greeks here, right, Brandon? Talking a little bit about how to look at them. Some of the things that you look at, some of the tricks of the trade. So, Brandon, why don't we break into that Theta discussion and give us a little backdrop here?
Yeah. So, like you said, start of the discussion around the Greeks and starting with Theta. This is usually when I lose people when they ask me to train them on options. So, hopefully not too many people shut off the audio. If you do, I understand. So yeah, Theta, or time decay, is the amount that calls and puts will decrease every single day as the options approach expiration date. So the value of an option decreases as time passes and expiration approaches. So, Theta is your enemy if you are an option buyer, which I am, and your friend if you are an option seller. So, this is because option buyers want time on their side for their option trade to come to fruition, and because option sellers want them to expire worthless so they can keep the premium received from writing them. So Theta is it is expressed as a negative number for long positions and positive number for short positions. So, for example, a Theta of negative 5 cents indicates that an options price will decrease by 5 cents per day, all outside. And I say all outside because obviously a stock price is going to move up and down, which will affect the price of the option. But if a stock were to essentially remain flat, so all else aside, a negative Theta of 5 cents would indicate that the options price would decrease by 5 cents per day.
So I guess an easy way for somebody to think about it is think of it as kind of an expense ratio for yourself. Like if you're like an ETF, the just the operating expense. Would that be a good way of looking at it?
I have never thought of it that way, but I think that is a great way to look at it, actually.
Yeah. So it just the constant headwinds. So when you're going in, you got to be cognizant of the time decay. Where's the best place to find this, and what are you looking at when you're putting in? I think you're Thinkorswim, right, Brandon, for your trading platform. So when you're looking at a Theta, what is some of the things that you're looking at right off the bat?
Yes, so I am Thinkorswim. So most brokerage, I haven't used any other brokerage account in a while, but at least Thinkorswim, you can customize how your options chain looks, and Theta is one that I personally would add to it. And again, it just sits there right beside every strike price, so you can see it on both the long and the short side. So, for me, when I'm looking at it, I don't necessarily look for anything in particular. I think it's kind of something to just be mindful of. Hey, if I go into this particular options contract, it's gonna, this is what I should expect. So, again, personally, I'm not an algorithm. I'm not running some huge portfolio of option strategies. So I'm not looking at it in that way, but I think it's just something to be mindful of. And, I think as a new trader too, just kind of knowing the basic concept that an option is going to decay in time is just an important concept. And seeing the theta in your account will kind of help bring that to light.
All right. So, again, something to certainly have in mind. So, talk a little bit the difference between if you're a buyer or the seller, Brandon, for Theta, and if you are looking to sell, what are some of the things that you'd be checking out for on the Theta side?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a seller, you really just want the best theta you could ask for. You want, if you're a seller, you want that thing to expire immediately, essentially, because when you write an option, the money's going to be deposited into your account immediately. And to keep that money and to have it not end up, in the money, you just want that thing to expire right away. So, finding options that expire quickly, and take that with a grain of salt. Because, again, if you write an options contract on a Friday afternoon at 3:45, it's going to expire quickly, but there's a lot of risk there. But yeah, you basically want to find something that is going to have that theta that is going to expire quickly.
So obviously, the closer the expiration, the higher the theta.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Is there an exact what you call it, an exact value on that on a per day type thing, or is it really just depend on the option, how far the strike price is? How's that determined?
Yeah, so that kind of goes to a little bit of whether an option is in or out of the money. So, again, each strike is going to have a different theta. Your long and your short, they're all going to have, different metrics applied to them. But an option is going to expire much quicker as it's closer to expiration. And out of the money options decay faster than in the money options. And this is because the deeper that an option moves in the money, the more it starts to trade like the price of the stock, which I've talked about a few times before. And the less meaningful the time value becomes for the option. So an in the money option is going to have a typically lower theta, and an out of the money is going to have a higher theta. So again, out of the money option premiums are comprised mostly of time value. Therefore, they're going to decay faster and creating that higher theta. So if you were to kind of think about this, if you were to take a chart, and there's examples out there if you do a quick Google search, but a chart of theta would basically look like, let's call it 120 to 90 days out until expiration. It's gonna, for the most part, be flat, gonna maybe slope down a little bit. And then all of a sudden, when you start to hit that kind of 90-day point, it's gonna start to look like a downward slope that's almost gonna kind of look like a nice hill to slide down. And then as you get closer and closer to that expiration, it's gonna expire, or it's gonna decay, quicker and quicker.
Okay, so obviously that just means that your profit is eroding quicker and quicker. So does that factor into your decision when you're banking a little bit earlier?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, again, that kind of goes along the lines of, what's your trading style? Come Friday, is this a lotto type? Where you're just gonna kind of push, hope that the stock moves higher, and you're gonna push and try to gain as much as you can. But yes, you're absolutely correct that as you get closer to that expiration, one tick up or down of the stock is going to have a pretty significant difference on the options value. And that's where you would kind of make your decision on taking your profits and losses.
So now in the money options, you say they typically have a lower theta, right, than out of the money option premiums. So that's kind of a cascading effect, the little bit of an exponential effect in terms of whether or not you're right or wrong right off the bat, I would assume, Brandon, right? Where if the stocks trades kind of going against you, that theta really starts working more and more as a headwind the deeper you get and closer to that expiration. Would that be the correct assumption?
Correct.
So more than anything, that just emphasizes how important it is to get that move right off the bat rather than um, fighting that uphill battle where stocks going against you, and then all of a sudden you kind of have that extra headwind with theta going against you. So would that be one of the reasons why you might be a little bit more inclined to cut a loser early rather than wait around?
Yeah, and once you get really close to the expiration, like you were just alluding to, I mean, if it moves against you, it's there might not be much recovery. And unfortunately, and this is the challenge with options is you come to Thursday afternoon, if you will, Thursday morning, Friday morning. If you're one or two candles early on your entry, you might find yourself all of a sudden down 30-50% almost immediately. So that is part of theta right there. Is it moves against you, and then that's kind of how you need to formulate your own strategy on how you trade options. If you come to a Thursday afternoon and that moves against you, and all of a sudden your position is almost immediately down 50%, do you want to sit there and pray that it's going to work out for you, or do you want to cut your losses at 50%? So that's definitely one of the challenges.
All right. Let's see. So just going through your notes here, Brandon. So I think we covered most of it. There was one thing you wanted to give as a heads up for when you're first starting to learn to trade options and how you should be treating theta. So, what's your word of advice on that?
Yeah, so I just personally think that if you're starting out learning options, that theta and delta are probably the best place to start when it comes to the options Greeks. Um, I think their concepts, again, I'll circle back to what I said at the beginning. I've tried to teach a lot of people options, and I have friends that I've worked with in finance for 15 years that still look at me like I have three heads when I try to teach them the Greeks, and that's usually where I lose people. So I think that theta and delta are maybe two of the more basic concepts, and I think that's a good place to start. And if you're kind of dipping your toe in the water, hopefully you're not putting 100% of your account value into an options trade. But if you're going to add, call it a 1% trade, make your first options trade in your account to try it out. I think that theta and delta are probably two of the most important for just kind of getting you're dipping your toe in the water.
All right. Anything else on theta, Brandon, while we're on the topic?
I think the only point I have here on my notes that we missed is just really one of the few consistencies that you find in options is that you can rely on that your option's going to decay. I mean, that's just how it happens. As it gets closer to expiration, it's going to decay. And again, if a stock price keeps rising and you're in a call, that's going to boost the option, but underlying there is decay that is going on. So it's just kind of one things that you can keep consistent in the options world.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it on the discussion for today. A lot of good information there, as per usual, Brandon. Just kind of keeping an eye out on the markets. We came right back to that 49.58 area and holding steady there at the moment. So we're watching that. But Brandon, just kind of recap. Talked a little bit about the broader market there. You were mentioning the funky feel to it. Moves like this, I assume, kind of reinforces the idea of that funky feel, where it feels like we're starting to make some sort of move and then just getting the carpet ripped out from underneath us. But just kind of harken back to that, these zero data days to expiration, I really think it's making it just so tough to figure out the market on a day-to-day basis. Would in your travels through the options world, have you been seeing that too? Have you noticed that in terms of when you're trying to break down the macro?
Yeah, I would agree. And it's funny you mentioned that. I think at the beginning of this call here, just 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago, whatever, I was sitting there talking about how we finally were a few candles above the 20-day moving average on the NASDAQ futures. And in the time I've been talking, I just realized they're well below it at the day's low, as you just mentioned. So yeah, I think the trillions of dollars are sloshing around in the zero DTE options world are, maybe not making things easy for us these days. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then on the trade front, we walked through Goldman and Microsoft calls that you have on. You still have them on. We talked a little bit about DraftKings and Flutter. We'll be watching to see if you take any action there. Tesla, Adobe, and Wolf as well. And then we went through the Theta discussion, and you did a great job at updating us on that. Now, do you include the Theta when you post your trade?
I do not.
Okay.
That's something that's going to move on you.
Is there a Theta level that's prohibitive for you, that you just refuse to, even if you like to set up in the trade, the Theta is just too high for you to take it? Does that happen?
That is a great question, and probably something that we could maybe even formulate another topic around on that note. For me, no. Me and the Greeks, and again, there's a whole bunch of different theories and thousands of pages of different things you can read on options. For me and the Greeks, they generally speaking don't scare me away from a particular trade. And that's just because I try to play breakouts, and I might be in a particular trade for 5 minutes, maybe an hour, maybe 3 to 4 days tops. So the Greeks in particular don't scare me away because I've never really looked at it and I'm like, well, the Theta is, negative 10 cents. And I'm like, you know what? I see an ascending triangle, and this particular stock, if it breaks that triangle, should make a 5-point move. I don't care if the Theta is negative 15. I'm in it for, an hour. That's it. So for me, it's been more of the implied volatility, which we recently talked about, as opposed to the Greeks, but there aren't necessarily numbers that scare me away personally. Now, if you're managing options a different way, if you're going out, a month, 3 months in your expiration, I would probably look at that a little differently. But if I'm going to be in a trade for an hour, no, there's nothing that scares me away.
Okay, all good info there. And as you said, we went through. We'll be posting these notes on Theta that Brandon provided us. Nice little quick outline. So hopefully it helps with the understanding, especially if you're new to the options, and even if you're not new to the options, hopefully Brandon provided a little bit of light on that subject, on how he uses it, that you could incorporate it into your trading. So, Brandon, with that, we'll let you get going on your end. We got just about an hour and a half left here in the market, so we'll be keeping a close eye on this dip. It's really just kind of died down since we got that dip, so which definitely looks headline related to me, just kind of going sideways there. But interested that they haven't been looking to buy this dip just yet.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, again, we're all of a sudden coming right back to that 20-day that we talked about a couple times now. So, I guess we'll see. Again, this has just been funky action. So I guess that's kind of one of those days that just kind of gives a little bit of a warning of just don't burn yourself. Kind of wait for it. It seems like we're setting up for some better trading. So just don't damage yourself too much.
Yeah, no, always a good call. Making sure you keep your portfolio intact is always a good way of going about your business. That's for sure. All right, Brandon. Well, thanks again for joining us as per usual. Looking forward to and what we're going to be doing. What did you say, Delta tomorrow next week?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, we'll take a look at how many people fell asleep during Theta. So maybe we'll take a break next week and not do a Greek. And I might be a little tired still on Tuesday from the Super Bowl on Sunday, depending on how those DraftKings bets go. So
right.
I guess TBD.
All right. No, that sounds good. That sounds good. So we'll keep that one as a work in progress there. But Brandon, thanks again for coming down here and chatting with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Talk to you.